All right, we are live. Hello, everybody. Thank you to all of you who are joining us live and those who are watching this after the fact. I have Nicole with me here today. I'm going to give her a moment to introduce herself in 1 second. I just want to let everybody know that as a reminder, sometimes when you put comments, and I think actually I don't even have that spot open, sometimes they don't push over, so we don't even see them till after the conversation's over. I don't want anybody to think that we're ignoring them. So we will go into those platforms, YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and just see if there's any comments and respond to them and get back to you with any questions that you all might have. Otherwise, we're just going to, enjoy the conversation. I told Nicole, I think it's spring or something. I don't know. All of a sudden, my eyes are very teary. So I may look like I'm just very emotional for the whole conversation, which hopefully will just add to the effect of it all. So with that said, so thank you, Nicole, for joining us first and foremost. And why don't you tell everybody about who you are and what you do, and then we'll chat with some cool stuff.
Well, thank you for having me and for showing up as you are today. Whether we have stuffy noses or watery eyes or emotions want to come out, I hope that today it can really be a conversation that feels good and feels real for all of us. I'm really into that. I love helping people who really do great work in the world. And Deb, you do just that. I think that as you show up fully, wholly as who you are, it makes a big difference for so many of us. And so first and foremost, I want to say thank you for showing up the way that you do and for having me here. It really, really means a lot. Now, I guess it goes with name first, huh? My name is Nicole Villegas. My pronouns are they and she, and I am all about the senses. So I help people tune into their senses so that they can change their relationship with stress. And that allows us to be more present, to create time for the moments that really matter in life. And for some of us, this is a moment that really matters in life today. I came to this work after working at a nonprofit. It was a dream position for me. I absolutely loved it. I deeply, deeply cared about my work, but I was seeing how leadership was unsupported. And that began to trickle down as it does. And burnout really snuck up on me. So when I was trying to heal that part of myself and my life experience, I was spending more time outside. But then I had a heat stroke. I was on a beautiful mountain bike ride. And at the end of the day, I found that my brain had swelled and I had a brain injury. So my speech, my vision, my balance, my energy, they were all affected. And I really had to relearn my senses. So through that process, I realized that the work I was doing to relearn how to engage in the world in this new kind of version, this new chapter of myself, that work was not only helping heal my acute injury at the time, but also this experience of burnout, right? And helping me navigate how do I go into my next chapter because I really care about the work that I do. What can I take away from this? So I kind of married my background as a doctor of occupational therapy with this lived experience and created a sensory conscious approach. And this approach to wellness helped me personally, helps my clients that I work with. I was consulting at the time and that supported them as well. So it's my honor in my life's work to help folks who really care about what they do through this approach, because it's when we really tune into our senses and do so in a purposeful way that we can build in our sensory structures that support us through the day and the compassion that go along with it. So I think we have a lot of juicy stuff to talk about because we are both, showing up for our people as much as possible.
Yeah, and what you just said, so I feel like as you were telling it, I'd remembered parts of your story, but I don't think I ever heard the whole story in its entirety. And I think hearing you say that, and actually this wasn't something that I was even kind of thinking about talking about, but when I just heard you talking about, your brain was overloaded, right, from the heat, so it swelled, and so you had to relearn. And I think when you think about the way that we're living right now, and there's always been different ways that we've checked out and not been in tune enough with ourselves, but right now there's a lot of stimuli, right, with the internet and with our phones. all of which can be incredible and amazing tools. So we're not villainizing them, but a lot of times we overload ourselves. So in many ways, we almost create that sense of, it's obviously not physically like a heat stroke, but we create that swelling of our ability to kind of be in touch with everything. And then because of it, we're not checking in with ourselves the way that you had to check in with yourself and say, like, okay, what needs need to be met first off physically and then emotionally in order to kind of proceed forward. So that's a really cool marrying, like you said, of the occupational therapy coming in. So maybe talk a little bit about, because I know that's what you do from having looked at your website. What is it that you do when you're working with somebody who is coming to you with they're in that state of like shock or, quote unquote heat stroke of sorts from everything that's going on, and they need to be able to slow things down so that they can really get in touch and be clear about what they need to do? What are some of the first things you kind of suggest?
Mm. Well, I appreciate that you highlighted that because it was my forced stop that I hope not everyone has to experience in their life, but my clients tend to experience it in their own way, right? Their own
Mm.
version of being overwhelmed by so much that is going on, having that sense that they're alone in it, maybe are afraid to fail and move forward. So, what I find is when I'm working with entrepreneurs, professionals, or consultants, that they may be dealing with the physical consequences of the chronic stress, right? Of that long term engagement at a level that is asking so much of our brain, our body, and our soul. Whether that is, continuously scrolling, bringing in so much information, right? We're constantly learning and learning and learning, but where does the pause and the application happen? So when folks come to me, they may be noticing, oh, well, now I'm noticing, these shoulder problems, or I've always just really felt tight here. And when I'm on my Zoom meeting, I'm also dealing with getting so nervous. My heart is racing, these kind of physical signs that are just messages from the body saying, hey, there's something here. Let's just pause for a minute. Let's tune into that, see what's going on. Let's support the nervous system. So that's often the case. Some people come to me and we're first talking about, well, why did you lose your voice when you had that really important speech coming up?
Mm.
So this tool that you're asking to bring forth with so much energy kind of went backward, right? And it really needed some time to be listened to. So there's something there where people are dealing with that day-to-day experience and then come to that greater understanding of, okay, it's beyond what we think it is. We can think our way through things as much as possible, but there comes a point where we need to integrate and really understand what the picture is in a holistic way.
Yeah, and I think being willing and open, even if you're somebody who's self-aware, to still reach out to somebody like you, whether it's you or somebody else, again, to give recommendations and feedback, because often, right, there's the ongoing joke about consultants are often giving consultants advice and coaches coach
Oh,
coaches,
so
etc.
circular. Yeah.
Right, because it's very hard when you're in the moment of it. And so, I mean, I will often hear myself saying something to somebody and be thinking like, yeah, that would have been good advice for you last week, Deb. But like when you're in the moment, so I think being very intentional about I need to pause and I need to listen to, because when I think about different issues that I've had both physically, emotionally, I definitely have suffered from burnout because you get going in the grind, and we have this perception that if it hurts but I can do it, then it's good. Right? Like
Mhm.
if I'm running and this muscle hurts, but I can keep pushing through it, I can keep push it. If I can work till 1 o'clock in the morning and I'm still getting up in the morning, right? And then it becomes cumulative till you hit that burnout stage. You really need to be checking in on a regular basis, not waiting until you hit the wall and saying, I've hurt myself. And that's why when we have people that can hold us accountable and help us to stop and recognize that, like, yeah, you're saying it's just an eye twitch, right? But that eye twitch might be because you've got some exhaustion going on, and that's just an early warning sign of what's going to come if you keep going on down this path. So I like that with the advent of social media, particularly, one of the things that we found is people that are offering these services, it's becoming more pronounced. It's becoming more of a conversation topic. So
Mhm.
that, generations ago, if you said something about, I'm going to go into a company and I'm going to help with stress management, that it would have been like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like stress management is like, we do happy hour on Thursdays, right? So
Exactly.
I think that now realizing people are more effective, staff is more effective, they're more collaborative, it overall benefits the individual, but it also benefits the greater organization when it's that type of environment. So I
Mhm.
think that calling those things out and really noting to people and the real long-term negative consequences. We're not just talking about like you're going to be groggy. We're talking about the physical toll that it's
Yeah.
taking on people's bodies.
Yeah.
And I think in connection with that, so I'm going to branch off, but it's going to come back. So I promise I'm going to do these. Deb's stories, sometimes they go off on a tangent, and I'm even
I
wondering
love
sometimes,
it.
like, where you going, Deb?
So my
So
brain is
my
too. Let's
Yeah,
dance together.
exactly. I'm like, I hear things, and I'm like, well, that was an interesting way to get there, but okay. So, my son, my oldest son was born with special needs, and so we had an occupational therapist that came in, some other therapists as well, but occupational therapist. And I found it fascinating as a parent and as a teacher, because I had been a teacher, watching kind of the techniques that were used in terms of ways to help him get used to the ways certain things felt and the ways to kind of maneuver differently and stuff. And even at that time, I was a high school teacher thinking about, we all have these ways that we're doing things or approaching things both mentally and in actual tasks, right? The way that we hold a pen that we might think is no big deal because it's just, well, that's just, yeah, it's funny. I've just always held it in this weird way. But like ultimately, okay, you're going to hurt yourself. So I think like that's just a simple example, but there's a lot of different ways. And so really what you're doing is you're taking that ability to look at where is somebody encountering challenges, whether it might be, a task like the way they're holding a pen or a sensory thing, and helping to apply that to business strategies. Can you maybe share a story of like a company or a client that you worked with without providing any private details where you were able to help them maneuver through an obstacle and get them to, we'll say symbolically hold their pen better?
Yes, yes. Deb, you are describing this OT process so beautifully, and it's wonderful because it can be applied in other settings as well, in the workplace. Right, I bring it to my coaching practice, and it's that process of noticing. Okay, what is the thing that you need and want to do? Who are you? What strengths and challenges are you bringing to this thing that you need and want to do? And how can we bridge that gap? So it makes me think about this architecture firm who I consulted with, and they were a great group of folks. I did some assessment of what might have been going on when it came to communication and finding that the type of communication didn't match the neurology or the way a
Mm.
person sees the world, right? The way our brain works. It didn't quite match with what worked for them. And what that means is that in a workplace, you have this really high need of clear communication, right? You want to get things done for your employees, for your clients, for your business. But what happens when the bridge between the person doing the communicating and the thing you want to do doesn't quite match up?
Mm.
So, by looking at the factors that are present there, we're able to work with how to honor that person and how to honor the needs or the demands of the communication. And it's when we look at the details of what you're bringing to the table. So, are you showing up to this moment of communication in a place of ease, right? Was the information provided to you in that email, was it subject line meet today?
Right.
And, saying meet at 2 o'clock, or was it, can we meet today and go over these things? Right? Having clear expectations or knowing what's coming next helps to ease our nervous system so that that person can show up in that meeting and have an idea of what's going to go on. They can feel more prepared, be less stressed, less anxious, have a sense of autonomy, right? And when we talk about autonomy, feeling informed, feeling like things are clear, those are all factors of burnout. So
Mm,
in this example, being able to look at, okay, what's the thing that we need and want to do? All right, specifically in this workplace, we want to be able to communicate clearly and help others to be seen. How do we do that? Well, we look at how they are navigating the world and how the task is also being navigated so that it's a better fit for everyone and you can actually do the thing that you're wanting to do.
right. I love it because it's circumstantial and it has to do with personality type too. Because what you're saying is, and this is something that even when I do consulting and change stuff, right? Like I think sometimes there's a misimpression that if you're being told that you need to adjust, that what you were doing is wrong. But it doesn't mean
Mhm.
what you were doing was wrong. It just means what you were doing wasn't the most optimal for the situation, right? So in that circumstance, like there have been clients where I've worked at where let's say the leader of a project I'm working with, they want like put what you need from me in the subject line, keep it short and sweet. Like I don't want to have to read an email. And then there's other people who are like, please put steps 1 through 10 because I want to be able to take it all in at once and process it. So you need to kind of open those doors to say, like, what is the way that you communicate? What is the way you receive? What is the way you give information so you can meet each other? So that when you get that one line email, you're not like, oh, this person must be mad at me. This is like, oh, this is the way this person communicates. And that's something that we can address. So you're
Yeah.
helping to not just affect productivity in the workplace, you're helping to affect relationships, which also impact productivity, but they also impact, retention, right? If somebody's going to stay with a company, it's because they're going to feel that even if they're in a stressful situation, which you have in a lot of different jobs, there's going to be stress, you are on the same page and you're able to work together. So that
Yes.
just applies across the board. And that's something that all of us can benefit from, whether we're, 5 years old or we're, 65 and the CEO of a company. We want to learn
Yes.
how to find people where they are and meet them there.
Yes,
And
yes, to feel supported, to feel well in a relationship, right? There was a post or a quote that I recently saw that said, um, "You deserve to work for a company or a boss that doesn't hurt your mental health, essentially."
mm,
And for folks that I work with, the additional part of it, you deserve to be a boss or a leader, a manager that doesn't hurt the mental health of your team, right? And so when we talk about these things that you can do, right? Probably all heard of these differences with an email and a meeting, but if we apply a sensory conscious approach to it, that's that additional understanding of, oh, how is my nervous system feeling in this moment? Right? What supports do I have? What supports do my team members have that helps them to navigate this physical space, but also this digital space? And
mm.
how can I apply these three C's of self care that I believe apply in all instances? But how can I apply compassion to this, right? Some sense of understanding for myself and the other person. How can I be curious about, oh, well, I wonder if there's going to be more to this meeting than I'm expecting. And how can there be consent? Right? This is the piece we're talking about with
Mm.
this example. How can there be consent and clarity on what's being expected in that moment? So it's beyond the tactical, here's what you do, here are the steps, but it brings kind of the heart and the presence into those so that we understand why. And then when it works, we can better understand, okay, oh, that's why that worked when before I was trying it and it wasn't going so smoothly.
Yeah, which in families too, which are often just microcosms of a company, right? The way the
Exactly.
dynamics and who's got whose role and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I love that, and it's interesting because my one of the things that I had written down to ask you and I hadn't, which I probably could have even asked earlier, and I think you just started to touch on it, was really like your definition of sensory consciousness. Like I think there's different ways that people could read that and kind of in their heads imagine what that means. And you just talked about the pillars, right? So
Mhm.
the compassion, the curiosity, and consent, which I love. But so what is that? What is your kind of, when you're saying that you're going to help people have this sensory consciousness, what does that mean?
Hmm. Such a good one because I love it. It means that we are living with an awareness and appreciation for how our senses impact who we are in the world, how we relate to other people, how we show up, right? Like literally everything that's coming in right now, sensory information, and our body is filtering it. There's a certain part of our brain that's filtering it. And when that filter happens, what are we attending to? What are we not attending to? What do we do with all of this information that like 99% of it we don't even know is happening? And that kind of depends on people's thresholds as well, right? But we're constantly acting on our sensory experience, whether that's getting a cup of tea or a cup of water, putting on a sweater, taking it off, these really seemingly
Mm.
basic functions, or sitting in a really long meeting and those fluorescent lights are getting down on us and we start to feel a little uncomfortable, but we can't move because there are expectations about relationship and all of that. How do you navigate all this information? And how do
Mm.
you utilize it to create the life that you want to? So that it lights me up because there's so much juiciness there that we can tap into and really, really, really utilize to be the people that we want to be, and not only be in a reactionary state where we're like, oh no, I don't do social situations, or I don't go to this and that because it's so uncomfortable for me, right? Or if you have a family and your kiddo is banging something going on 20 minutes and you feel the fire inside of you and
Right.
you're like, okay, brain, come just help me through this moment, right? It's like, how can we be even more present in those moments so that the fire doesn't build so strongly and so that you
Mm.
can be more at ease and maybe even
So
appreciate that moment.
yeah, well, there's a few different, well, there's a lot to this, but like
Yeah.
a few different things that I thought about even like in practical application. So, what you're talking about, one way is first off, by noticing those signals, you can try to affect how you're going to respond because you become aware. You mentioned like as a parent, and this isn't going to be a hard and fast rule because I can admit that even as a parent, when I'm trying to be very self-aware, sometimes I start yelling and I'm like, "Oh, you're yelling, stop yelling." That's really good modeling. So it's like even when you know and you're present, but I think when you're feeling it, okay, I feel the heat coming up or I feel my foot starting to shake. You're aware something's happening because my body is responding in a certain way. So let me check in here and see what's going on. So one, you can kind of help yourself from sometimes from it escalating. And the
Mhm.
other thing is too, which I thought is interesting to think about. So for the example with the fluorescent lights, right? So let's say you're sitting in a meeting and you're next to a couple people and you're starting to feel really uncomfortable. Our mind might start to solve the neurological response with an answer that isn't right. So we're like, oh, I don't like sitting next to these people. And it's got nothing to do with them. It has to do with the fluorescent lights. So it's also being very acutely aware of what are the things that are happening around me that might be impacting me so that I don't start misinterpreting this situation, right? If there's a loud music that's playing down the hallway, that doesn't mean that I'm not capable of sitting and listening to somebody talk for 30 minutes and learning. It means I need a quiet environment to do that. So one, you can de-escalate yourself. Two, you can keep yourself in check in terms of what assumptions you might be making. And I think also understanding what you need for optimal performance. So if you, like you said, well, some needs we know. We know we need to have enough water. I don't drink enough water. So that, like, I can't even say I'm not listening to my body because my body doesn't have to tell me that. Every scientist you ever talk to, doctor, probably person in the world, with a few exceptions, would say you need to have a certain amount of water. So we have some hard and fast things like that. But then there are other things. What type of chair do you like? Do you like to sit in a soft chair or a hard chair? Do you want to have it up? And so when we're in tune with those things and we start to notice patterns, like every time I sit in this chair, I have a harder time paying attention. You now know, hey, that's not a situation that's going to work for me. And you can start to look for better paths forward. So
Mhm.
you really become very empowered to create more positive experiences for yourself. And like you said, now enjoy the moment. Hey, let's switch out the lights or whatever, if it's an option.
Yes.
So you can be present and you can enjoy those things instead of automatically assuming that when my child does that and I feel that hot feeling, it means I'm going to yell, the child's going to cry, this is what's going to happen. Instead, it's I feel that hot feeling and I do something that's going to help me to calm down. What are some of the techniques that you talk people through from a sensory perspective? Let's use that example, right? The mom
Mhm.
feels that heat. What do you kind of suggest as a way to make that situation or try to make that situation go in a better direction?
Mm. Yes, this is a great example of a sensory pattern, right? So patterns that are already kind of a part of your life that you might notice. Well, now that you know what it is, you might notice it a bit more, right? Like, oh, okay, so when the TV is on and the kid is banging the thing, and I'm
Mm,
trying to focus on, say, something in the living room, then that fire is really burning up. It's like coming up here. So noticing that maybe it's when there are, sounds that are incongruent with the activity that I'm doing. Maybe it's when I'm really trying to pay attention to something and it's too much for me to attend to at once. So, in that moment, say the parent is really trying to do one thing, the sound is coming up, they're feeling that fire within. That fire within is a sympathetic response in your nervous system, right? Often known as like a fight or flight. So,
mhm,
you're probably getting doses of some cortisol or a stress hormone, getting some adrenaline in that moment, and that's what makes you want to shout out, right? That's what makes you want to put an end to it really, real quick, really quickly, because that's your fight for that situation. So by acknowledging that and to know, okay, this is what's happening and I need to diffuse it within myself before something can change around me. Because it's true that you can stop that sound that's bothering you, but you'd still feel the fire inside and maybe even resentment because that
mhm.
took you off of your pattern, whatever you were trying to focus on. You might even start to go into a spiral of, oh, now I'm a bad parent because I yelled at them, and all of this. So in those moments when it is that big activation, diffusing, like literally you can go like this. Maybe shake it out, maybe have the
Mm,
fit you need to have. If you are also feeling a little flighty or you need to exit the situation, you can exit that situation. And instead of expecting yourself to be calm all right away just because you moved your body out of the situation, allow yourself to, ah, sigh and maybe get some of that sound out that wants to come out, so that when you return to that environment, this big response has been nurtured, has been cared for. So your nervous system knows, okay, I'm safe right now. And there's a sound. Maybe is that, oh, maybe that's a sound that can keep going. That's okay. My kid is going. Or actually, I think that sound is disrupting other people in the family too. Now you can go over and communicate what you need
mm.
to.
Right,
Because
in a from a calmer place. Well,
mhm,
and the important piece there is you're not trying to tell yourself to ignore it or distract it or you're
mm-mm.
actually owning it, right? Like the sigh thing, and we do that. Like that's a natural human instinct to sigh.
Yes.
So it made me feel like, okay, when I do that, because sometimes you feel almost like, did I just do that because I wanted everybody to know that I was upset, right? But it's really just your natural body's response to like, I got to get this out. And I also think from a parenting perspective, it does make me think about, I think sometimes when our kids, when we have a conversation and they're walking away and they do that, they do the sigh because they're processing it. But how many, I mean, I could admit there's been times where I'm like, hey, I heard, you know what I mean? Like, so what? Like, let them sigh when they're walking away. But I think like we want silence is consent. You are agreeing with what I just said to you. And when they sigh, you're like, hmm. So I think it's a reminder too that we have to allow people to process things in ways that are productive for them as long as they're not really negatively impacting. And a child sigh would be an example of that.
Yeah, and that's
One of the other
beautiful.
thing, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just beautiful, Deb, because you're, you know, having that compassion. You're practicing already, having that compassion for your kid and what they just went through. I'm guessing that they just went through like a pretty stressful talk, right? Probably pretty stressful. And if their body is giving them the opportunity to dissipate some of that through the form of a sigh, like how beautiful that they're allowing their body to do that. And while it has cultural connotations, are often built in a lot of isms or systems that aren't quite supportive, um, if you can take a moment and allow that to happen, or even let them know, that can be later, can be before.
Yeah.
This is a tough talk for me too. I think we're both a little bit stressed right now, and afterwards, like whatever you need to do, I want you to know that I support you if you need a sigh on the walk to your room, or if you need to, shake it out or go in your room and turn on some loud music to kind of
Yeah.
co-regulate with that.
Yeah.
like acknowledging that that is a natural process for us. So that is already putting into practice that compassion piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's taking ownership too. I think it's empowering to you too when you're feeling stress, as opposed to feeling like the sigh is happening to you. You are doing the sigh, right? Like if you
Yes.
actively do it before it wells up and kind of takes you off guard, then you just can tell you can show yourself that you're more in control too, which is
Yes.
obviously in those stressful situations. One of the things we're feeling is lack of control.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, it's one of the
and I wanted,
most empowering practices that you can be proactive, and instead of the for some of us decades and decades of pushing through or pushing things down, to then know, oh wait,
yeah,
this is how I experience the world, right? Similar to me after my injury and knowing, wow, there's no pushing through this. This just happens to be how I experience the world right now. Okay, little different than it was before. It was a lot different, but it's
yeah.
when we can know that, okay, here's how it is at this moment in time, and what worked for so long, that's not working right now. So let's try something new.
Yeah, yeah, I can't even imagine, your experience. And one of the things I love, senses. So I love photography and I love poetry. Well, I love writing in general, but specifically when I think of poetry and I think of photography, one of the things that I really enjoy about those art forms is getting in touch with things. So, for example, if I'm outside, it's like getting on the ground and looking at just the one blade of grass and the way that the sunlight is hitting it. And when you take that picture or you write that poem, what we want to do, I mean, we learned this when we started writing when we're little, right? What we want to do is we want to help to affect emotions. We want to bring people to their senses. What do we want them to do? We want to think about what the sun feels like as you're laying in the grass. What do I smell? What do I hear? Right? Assuming that all five senses are something that are functioning. And so when we do those, when we're in touch with all those things, that is the fullness of the experience, right? The walking in the house and smelling the cookies or things like that, that brings that waft of emotions. So if we ignore any one part of those, again, unless you've got some type of disability that is inhibiting one of those to function correctly, when we're in touch with the senses that we are able to be in touch with, we allow ourselves to live more fully in every single moment, and that makes us enjoy the good moments, but it also allows us to process through the negative moments in the way that you're talking about, right? The senses. So I'm sure that there are some folks who probably are, it's not that they're not aware of them, it's just that it's been a long time that they've taken time to like stop and smell the roses, literally and symbolically, right?
Hmm.
So how do you, so if somebody comes, if you're working, let's say in a company, because I think probably if somebody's coming to you, they have some awareness that something needs to change. Maybe not, maybe they've been recommended, but, and they have that resistance to like, this is not, I don't need that. Like, that's not what I need. I just need to get my, I just need better time management. And they're kind of disregarding some of those other things. Are there approaches that you have found to be helpful with somebody who just isn't aware of the impact that changing that about themselves is going to help? Is there a conversation or are there techniques?
Hmm. Yeah, that resistance is a great place to explore, right? Often I find when people are in that space of, oh no, okay, I don't know if this is for me. And to be fair, we're all humans. So we all have a body that is
Right.
bringing information and shaping our life. But if there's resistance there, I find that after conversations, we often find that it's built by some belief about oneself, right? That maybe the arts, say poetry, music, being in tune with something like that is is not fitting for the type of person that they are, right? We can bring in different beliefs around patriarchal systems and what it means to be a strong person in the workplace or to be a CEO of your business. We can look at capitalist systems that say success looks a certain way. But when you were speaking earlier about the empowerment of this, that's where the resistance doesn't quite hold its footing, because instead of looking towards those systems that tell us what we should do or how we should be, it means that all of the answers about how you're going to fix the problem are probably within you. You've probably learned a lot, and it's either let's talk about the blocks, right? Your habits or routines, again, these sensory patterns and sensory structures that aren't supporting you to integrate all this great information. Or maybe it's better understanding your nervous system, because we all have one. Maybe it's really then bringing it all together. So it's with a humility, with an understanding that we're all continuously learning, that we can greet that resistance and really turn it into something beautiful, because it's an opportunity. Again, it's more information that's saying, okay, here's where the difficult part might be for me. That's essentially what resistance is yelling.
Right.
So practically, at the beginning of those conversations, it's about, helping that person to develop some sense of trust in themselves for the journey. So to notice, has what you've been doing up to this point, is it still working for you? Usually it's not, right? We're there having the conversation for a reason.
Right.
Okay. And is there any part of you that's open to shifting or change, to finding more ease, to having more time in your life for things that matter, for your health to improve? Because if there's a little window there of openness for those things to change, then that is enough space for a person to bring in some of these practices and notice the difference.
Yeah, and what I hear you saying is you're asking them really to dissect where the resistance is,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's and that's communication, meeting them where they are. You're not going to say, "Well, you're wrong and we're doing this," because that's not ultimately at the
And the
end of the day,
resistance like, no.
it's not going to solve the bigger problem. They can do the breathing activity if that's what you're walking them through, but is it going to last? So I think it's helping them to understand where that is. Similarly, I do that. I do a thing I call hugging or embracing the resistance, right? So like if there's a change, and it can be sometimes a minor change, but if people have preconceived notions of what the impact of the change is going to be, or a reason why they like the way they're doing things, it's important to discuss that, not to just say, well, this is what's happening. It's important to discuss that and say, like, let's talk about all the reasons why you think this isn't for you, or this isn't going to work, or there's going to be a problem. Now let's look at those and sometimes there is a reality. Well, I've been doing it this way and this has worked really, really well for me. And if we do it this way, I'm going to have to take an extra hour out of my day. That's a legitimate complaint, right? I get that. Okay, so what are the pros and how will those offset? And so when you're doing that with that individual, you're allowing them to have that feeling, express that emotion, give the validity that they have for it, because certainly they do, given whatever their past experience is, and then move forward from it.
Yeah.
And I expect there's a lot of people, more than you, maybe not, maybe a lot of people let you know, but there's probably folks that probably never even get the chance to tell you how that has changed them, because they were able to break a preconceived notion that they had about themselves or a situation that they didn't have to live with, and they could get out from underneath.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that space makes a lot of sense, because you're already in a stress response. Again, if you've been pushing it down for a really long time, pushing through things, just feeling like, oh, thank goodness I made it through that. Okay, here's the next thing. You're in that stress response a lot. So it makes sense for there to be resistance, right? Because you're in
Yeah.
protective mode. No, I don't want to feel the pain and the vulnerability of these ups and downs. And that could even be the super ups, the celebrations. So, it's really when that state is keeping us from noticing, wow, I made it through that. I have an amazing team. I'm doing my life's work. This feels so good. And you really want to enjoy the fruits of your labor. That's why you do this work, so that you can appreciate, really feel that fun, and not always have the hamster wheel of the what
Right.
ifs and the worries and the thoughts. Yeah.
What is one of the techniques that you guide other people through that's one of your favorites? I'm sure you have a lot, but like, what is one of the things you have other people do that you really find yourself benefits you, or that you really enjoy?
Hmm. We can do something together now.
Sure, let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Deb, it makes me want to ask, This isn't the practice, but specifically, but it makes me want to ask, in addition to your eyes, is there anything else that's kind of like going on in your body today that you're like, oh, what's happening there?
Yeah, that's a large question. I mean, yeah, and I
Answer to
definitely
your comfort.
yeah. Oh no, and it's fine. But yeah, and I definitely you'll notice too. Like I'm leaning forward in my chair. That's a tendency I have. So I would say there's probably stress from like here to the bottom of my feet. So there's tension
That's a
all the
good
way from that.
zone.
Yeah.
It's a good
It's just
zone.
a full body thing. Not getting enough water. I've definitely had a couple weeks of not taking the proper physical care of myself because I was on the hamster wheel. So
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot that could be unpacked from that.
Hmm. Well, since that is your personal experience, we'll leave that to be, and acknowledging that there's probably some other people listening that have also experienced that and maybe are continuing on that hamster wheel, right? So there's this um what is the word? Sometimes, especially post brain injury, finding the right word doesn't quite
Yeah.
happen. But I'll describe it. This pull, right? This pull in that your body is giving you a lot of information, telling you, okay, it's time to pay attention here. And this pull out, where we want to start focusing on the to-do list and get super active because it's a little too uncomfortable to be in here, right? So kind of this movement that's happening, and something that you can do to support yourself is letting your nervous system know exactly where you are in space. And a way that we can do that, in addition to what a lot of people share, orienting, one thing you
Hmm.
smell, one thing you see, all of that, is to really use your eyes. Because when we look further distances, that signals to our body where we are in space in a different way than when we're looking
Oh,
up close. So
okay.
if folks have been staring at this while we're talking, you've been looking at your computer today, my invitation for you is to look up and look around. Find either the corner of a room or a window and follow that line. You can follow that line with your eyeballs as much as possible. You may move your head a bit, but follow it around. And if you're looking at a window frame, go up, 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 over, 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 down, down, down. Now, if you are a highly sensitive person, if you're an empath, you might already notice changes in your body. Maybe not, but allow yourself to follow that line for as long as is comfortable. Then, as that line, say, of the wall or the window goes down to the ground, you may be imagining it, but imagine it coming to you. The line is coming to you, to your body. Then notice where it comes and intersects with your body. Then follow that body part up, say it's your legs, then to your stomach, then to your heart. You're welcome to put your hands on your heart. You know that that's coming then to your throat and your face and the top of your head. Now, if you have your hand on the top of your head, know that from here to your feet, to the walls and the windows that you outlined, you are in a supportive space. It is there for you. This is where you're existing right now. You are here fully, wholly complete, wonderful, just the way you are. You can take a deep breath and sigh out with sound if it feels good. Relax your arms, relax your body. I know that you just did, a couple minutes of really, really great presence work. You are existing right now, and that is wonderful. And I'm grateful for you for existing.
Uh, you know, I actually felt the reduction in I don't want to say, well, yeah, I would say it's a reduction in stress because I think to some degree when we're working, we have that kind of level of, the second I looked up and it made me realize something. So a lot of times when I'm thinking, that's what we do, right? We sit back and we look up. Why? Because that's what our body's longing for. Like, get me out of this box that
Mhm.
I'm in, right? So you sit back and you look up. And so I'm missing multiple opportunities throughout the day where, like, if I'm already stopping and looking up, I could be doing that and I could be grounding myself and getting myself calmer because I'm already doing it. It's not like, oh, I don't have time to take a break. Like if I'm already looking up and thinking, I could go like over, right? Like that's such an easy technique. I will now be doing that. My family is going to walk in the office and be like, what's going on? And I'm like, don't break the line. Like, don't break the line right now. I'm in the zone. It's coming to me right now. Don't interrupt. So I think that that's beautiful. What a great action thing for people to be able to do wherever you are with you don't need a tool. You don't need resources. There's, if you want to make noise, you can, as you said, you can put your hand, but you don't have to. So people could do that in any space without it even being noticeable. You don't have to kind of have insecurity, right? Like some of the breathing techniques and stuff, you might not want to be in the conference room doing. I mean, you can, but some folks might not want to. But I love that. That was really, I've never done that before. The follow the line. Never done that before. I've done like pieces, like I've done the put your hand on your heart, but I've never done the follow the line. And literally, as soon as you said find a corner, I found a corner and I was like, oh, happy corner. Like I just felt happy. So I was like, oh, I'm not in the box. So thank you. I'm glad that that I asked that question, and I'm glad that you offered to do that because I think that that was really beneficial. I'm imagining a lot of people who are either watching this now or will be watching this later who are going to be doing the same thing. We should do a survey. Like, where did your eyes go? Mine went to a ceiling corner only because that was direct spot. But
yep. And that's curiosity in practice, right? Just being open. So back to that person that might have some resistance to even the idea of something like this. Well, for a moment, can we have some curiosity and say, I wonder what it'll be like if I do this practice? Okay.
Right.
And then give it a go and see how it goes. We don't need any result or outcome or answer. It's just moving through that space and time in that certain way and see how it goes. Yeah.
No, I think that that's really beautiful. And I love that you keep coming back to curious. I use curiosity a lot in my work as well, because I think that that helps people when I can't do this or I don't want to do this, right? It's like, let's be curious about it. Like you've gone through change before, right? We've all opened doors that we've never seen the other side of before. So we all are capable of doing that. We just have to have that curiosity that, good things can come. And if it's challenging, then we'll pivot as we confront it. But I appreciate you. Now we're at 47 minutes because I wasn't even, before we get off, the first thing I want, how do people get in touch with you? I mean, obviously you've got your website, so tell people about what's the best way in social media, where your website is, if people want to follow you or find out about what you do.
Yes, I am at Dr. Nicole OTD on all socials, Nicole Villegas on LinkedIn, and my website is sensoryconscious.com.
Okay, that's great. And do you have a preferred social media platform, or you're wherever people want to find you?
LinkedIn is great. I really love that you can send me a message. We can get to know each other and see if there's space for some time and some ease. Yeah, I'd be happy to help.
Excellent. Yeah, I like LinkedIn as well. I think I like them all for different reasons, but I've become more and more present on LinkedIn. And we all just did that activity with you, but still, what is a final message that you'd like to leave with everybody?
We're all sensory conscious leaders. And it's when we put it into practice that we can continue to make the positive impact we want to without perpetuating trauma along the way. So you can suffer less, your team can suffer less, and you can keep doing good work. So I'm here to support you in that journey. And that reminds me, I promise this wasn't planned, but it sounded like an infomercial. I had created a quiz to support folks if you're interested in exploring it a little bit more. And it really looks at your sensory conscious leadership style. So that's at sensoryconscious.com, where there's a link on LinkedIn as well. Kind of explore, see what it's like. They're fun questions, as you can imagine, with my vibe. I think I have one in there of, if you're at a fair or something, are you the person at the table selling your goods, walking around with a clipboard, or just getting a sense of what's going on? So they're kind of real world, fun, imagine yourself questions. So I hope folks enjoy that.
Yeah, I want to do that. I'm already like, well, I could be that or that. So I'll have to think about, you got to lean into one.
Hmm.
So we'll definitely check that out. But I liked your, yeah, that we're all capable of, we are all sensory beings, to your point,
Yeah.
sensory conscious leaders, and recognizing that and enjoying it, enjoying the moment. I thoroughly enjoyed this moment with you. All my senses were completely in tune to what you were saying and just enjoying it. I think you've got a delightful personality. So I imagine that that definitely helps with some of those people that are resistant, because you're very just, okay, I'm here for you. I'm with you. And I think that that's essential. So I hope that many people reach out to you. I thank you very much for taking now almost 50 minutes. Well, it's going to be 50 minutes out of your day to spend with everybody. Thank you for everybody that joined us today, whether you joined us live or you're watching after the fact. We appreciate you, and we hope that you go out there and live your best life.
Thank you,
All
Deb.
right.
Take care.
Bye bye.